Yeah. Hello. Hello. Yeah. Audio, video, everything fine. Good afternoon, Anish. Audio, video, everything is fine, Anish. Yes. Good afternoon, Shweta. Yes, meet. Okay. I think everything is fine. Okay. Let's get started. This is reading comprehension. Okay. Probably the most important part of civil services aptitude test. Now, let's first see very basic about reading comprehension. This lecture is all about introducing you to reading comprehension. Okay, what are the different kinds of keywords that are asked, what is the general approach that we will take to solve questions. Okay, some questions we'll take right on the board. I will explain you how I would do this or how you should also eventually start doing it. Okay, so this session will be very simple. Your main focus should be about learning. Okay, there may be questions you will get the answer sometimes quickly, sometimes you will get it wrong, does not matter. This session is all about focusing on me. Okay, from the next session of RCs we'll focus on you, that how you are solving this and everything. Okay, now let's get started. So first thing is reading comprehension. It has 27 to 30 questions. So actually from 21, 22, 23, 24, for 4 years they gave 27 questions each, but in 2025 they gave 29, 30 questions. Okay, so usually we can consider it like 27 questions and then understand how we should be approaching it. Now, what do you think? What is the amount of time that you should allocate to this part? That is in reading comprehension in the exam hall. So you have a 2-hour exam. Okay, how much of it should go to RC? How much time? What do you think? Okay, so yeah, so see, the time that I expect you to do is within 40 minutes. This is the limit that we will be giving. Within 40 minutes we have to do the entire reading comprehension part. Now if you think reading comprehension is your strong part, okay, and the other parts are weak, so I should give more time to it, that means it is not your strong part. Whatever is your strong part, because this is a time limit based exam, so if you can do something in a very limited time period and do it decently correct, then only this is considered your strong part. Okay, so in any case you have to cover it within 40 minutes. Now the most accurate way will be that what you do, you read the passage, then read the question, and then you read the passage again, and then you read the question again, and then passage again, and then eventually reading the question and marking the answer. This is the most accurate, correct? But this is not possible in the exam scenario, because you have to do around 27 to 30 questions in 40 minutes. So you will hardly have a minute or a few seconds more, correct? Now, so what should be the approach is this. Now, if let's say you have 27, 28 questions, out of them, let's say you leave a few, okay, 1 hour, 1 hour 15 minutes meet? No, not at all. Okay, the thing is that some people have a wrong assumption that, see, this you will be able to do, let's say, then you have to do 20 questions at least in mathematics, correct? 20 questions in mathematics and reasoning combined. Now, this you won't be able to do in 30 minutes, correct? So don't divide it like in the normal way, that is, you are dividing, each question gets these many marks. Reading comprehension should take less time. Okay, also if you read the passage again and again, what happens, it creates all your biases also become more clear in your head. Okay, so what happens when you read it once, then you are only focusing on the reading comprehension. But when you start reading it multiple times, what you will see, whatever you have learned, ultimately everything will be from the general studies only, correct? So those all things start clouding your brain, and then you tend to do it wrong. So reading it multiple times, okay, can sometimes become fatal also. So don't do that. Within 40 minutes we'll be done. Then in 27 to 28 questions, let's say we attempt 24 questions. Now if in them you get 18 correct, 6 incorrect, how many marks you will get? So 6 incorrect means what? 3 incorrect is equivalent to 1 correct. So this is just 18 minus 2, that is 16 effectively correct. Now 16 if you do effectively correct, how many marks this will be? 16 into 2.5, that is 40. This is our minimum approach that we want to get to. Hopefully after doing the classes, I hope that you are able to attempt all the RCs. Then you may get a few more wrong here, a few more right here. So you will score somewhere more than 40. This should be the aim. The safe score is 40 plus always in RC, and 40 plus always in reasoning and mathematics combined. That will keep you safe. Otherwise in some year what happens, people overly depend on RC. Some year RC is extremely tough, and then they are just sitting in their homes repenting. Other times what happens, sometimes mathematics is too tough, so then they have to rely on RC, correct, and those people have not prepared RC. So don't be those people, okay. 40 is what you want. This is the minimum. Of course maxima is you can score any number of marks. Then now some note points. First thing, you cannot get all correct, okay. Now aim is to maximize score, that is in 40 minutes you want 40 plus marks. On your good day, after learning everything, you will score 50, okay. On your good day you will score 45-50 marks also, but I will always consider the worst day of your life in the second half of CSAT. Second half of that day, even if it's your worst performance, then also you should be clearing CSAT, okay. We don't want to be a team that is very prepared for the World Cup, somehow qualifies and then wins the World Cup. We want to be that 2003 Australian team, okay. Even on their worst day they used to win, correct. That I want from CSAT at least, okay. Then next thing is, don't change your theory with every question. This is a major issue that people get to, that is after they learn everything, then they start doing questions, some mock, some random thing. Now some different solution is given. Now based on that, just because they got that question wrong, they change the entire theory of whatever they have learned. So eventually they become a clumsy ball of different information from everywhere, and that is not a very good thing. So if you start getting regularly 40 plus marks, correct, then you just stick to that strategy. You need not change, that's it. That is what you should aim for. Otherwise it can get haphazard. Then PYQ should be your focus. You are giving mocks and all, there you solve it, it's fine. But the main thing is that you have 13 years of PYQs. Earlier there used to be 35-36 questions also. So I have taken average, let's say 31 question. Then also you have around 400 questions that are from the previous year questions itself, correct. So this should be your focus. I will share a PDF where you will have all the RCs only of that particular year, and of each year I will share it on the Telegram channel, okay. So on the Telegram channel I will share, let's say 2015 paper, it will be there. In the comment I will also post the answer key, official, everything official, because many institutes have given some wrong answers and then they didn't update it with the official answer key. So official paper of just RCs, the maths pages I will remove, and official answer key. And if you have any particular doubt in any particular question, there only you comment and I will answer it. So that will be for your practice. Now, use of GS knowledge must be done technically in option elimination. Now there are two groups. One kind of people say that you should do it using your GS knowledge, and the other people say that you should just forget everything you learnt in GS and do RCs afresh. Now that is very good for a teacher to say that do RCs afresh, but in the exam hall scenario you don't have that much time. You don't have the luxury of time that a person who is standing here with already read RCs have. Okay, so I have that advantage when I am teaching you, but you won't have it in the exam hall. That's why I am not saying you that you forget everything in the GS and then you read the RCs afresh, it becomes difficult. So what you have to do? You have to learn to use your GS knowledge tactically. You will learn, I will teach you that how you use this. Because what I have seen is most questions if you see. So if this is RC, then this is GS. Yeah, so this orange that you see is GS. So almost all the things that you get as RCs are from your GS only. Very few RCs are beyond your GS and very few are opposite to your GS. So that's why relying on GS knowledge is good, but very tactically, so that you don't get wrong. Then now we get to keywords. Okay, Neelam. Then let's see the keywords. Keywords are important, but not as important as sometimes you people feel. Okay, now I'll be explaining you all the keywords. For example, you might have seen in some question they ask you crux of the passage, main idea of the passage, assumptions of the passage, correct? Then inference, corollary. So I'll explain all these words to you. Okay. After this, you will realize over some time that they become, except for 2-3 buckets that we create, they become not so important. With respect to each keyword is not very important. Just 2-3 buckets you need to identify that assumption is a different category, this is a different category, and that is a different. Just 3 categories you will get to. Now, first let's understand all the different keywords that we get. Now, first thing, if this is your passage, from the passage itself will emanate something that you call crux or main idea, crux or main idea or central idea, etc. All these will come directly from the passage. You read the passage, you stick to the passage, understand what is the main theme of the passage or main or crux of the passage, and that only will be your answer. You need not go anywhere beyond. Stick to the passage itself. Then there are certain questions that will require you to go sometimes little beyond. Okay, very little beyond you have to go. These are called inference based questions. So most of it will come from the passage only. Some extensions, sometimes little you will have to extend for inference. Even in inference, what I have seen, most questions directly emanates from the passage itself. Then there are 2 other categories. There is something known as assumptions. Now, why I have drawn it like this? Because assumptions come before the passage. Assumptions are what, so after reading something, after reading a passage, you get an understanding of how an author is thinking. Now, based on that understanding, you have to bring some other kind of arguments that support the same things in RC. This is assumption. For example, see this. I keep saying this, please attend my classes to clear CSAT. Okay, I don't keep saying it, but you understand the context. Then, please attend my classes to clear CSAT. Now, if I am saying this, I write a whole passage on this, that please attend my classes on CSAT, classes will be structured like this, that, all these things. Now, the underlying assumption that I am not saying, but it is there, is I at least believe that my classes are helpful, correct? If I don't believe this, that my classes are helpful for CSAT, then I won't be writing this whole passage. So this is an underlying assumption of the author. Understood? Now, last thing is this. Last thing is something that goes parallel to the passage, but much more specific. This is called corollary. Now, those who come from science or mathematics background, they might have heard of this term called corollary. Now, corollary is something that goes parallel to the passage, but it is usually much narrower than the passage. Now understand this. So it comes from the passage but not directly, like the main idea or crux. So based on your understanding of the passage, if you can draw a parallel line or a parallel argument, that will be corollary. Now let's see this. Yeah. So the theorem, or let's say the RC is this. The sum of angles of a triangle is 180 degree. This is the RC. Then if this is the statement, the sum of angles of a triangle is 180 degree, then from this you get a corollary or a derived result, which is each angle of an equilateral triangle is 60 degree. How you got this? Because you know that equilateral means equal sides, correct? So that means this actually implies equal angles also. Now if this is equal angles, this sum is 180 degree. So you know what? This will be like 3x is equals to 180 or x is equals to 60 degree. Correct? So this was a much wider thing. Usually what we do, so in RCs, whenever a question is asked to us, we try to take a very broad view of the reading comprehension. Correct? We take the most majoritarian approach. Okay, we take some option which encompasses everything, but not in corollary. Corollary is usually goes much more specific than the RC itself. So here it was much more simple or much more general in the sense that sum of all angles of triangle is 180 degree. Now this talks specifically about equilateral triangle derived from this. This is corollary. From this diagram you can remember these main keywords. Now if I was telling you that there are only 3 divisions mainly. So basically inference is also very similar to these. Okay, so all this can be considered one bucket. This is like bucket 1. Assumption is a different bucket altogether. This is bucket 2, and corollary, though not many questions from corollary come, but 1 or 2 questions anytime they tend to give, and that is bucket 3 because it is different. Okay, so these are the main keywords that we need to know. Okay, Smith. Then now once we have understood the basic framework of all these keywords, I have made one single passage, okay, one single RC. Of that RC, we will see if the question asks you about the inference, what will be the answer? If they ask you about the crux, what's the answer? Corollary, what's the answer? From the same passage. Okay, now let's do that. Yeah, let's read this passage. See, the ideal of objectivity, particularly in the social sciences, is needed because it ensures that the findings of the researchers are not influenced by personal or political beliefs. Correct? So what it is talking about, that the ideal of objectivity is very important, particularly in social sciences, so that whatever research or findings that they are doing, that is not affected by your personal beliefs. Correct? This you also believe. Then, however, complete objectivity is perhaps an unattainable ideal. This also you understand. Correct? Complete objectivity cannot be there. Everyone who writes anything, however neutral he is, he will have some kind of biases. Then values and interest inevitably influence what social researchers choose to investigate. Correct? Now what you are searching for in social sciences, what you are searching for, what is the question that you are trying to investigate, that also is affected by your biases. Correct? Now if you live in India and you are doing social sciences research, maybe you will do more and more research on caste, because caste is a very important social element in India. But if you, let's say if you were born in some other country, some European country, you won't be focusing on caste. Correct? So what you investigate, this also depends on researchers choose to investigate. What you choose to investigate, that also depends on you or your personal biases, how they interpret their data, then, and how they present their findings. Everywhere you have certain biases. Then, so first it said that we should have ideal of objectivity. Then it said that, but every time there will be biases. Then acknowledging this influence does not mean that the pursuit of objectivity should be abandoned. Now, just because I am saying that there will be some biases, it does not mean that I should just abandon objectivity. Why I should not abandon objectivity? See this. Rather, it should be understood as a goal that is approached through critical self-awareness and methodological rigor. That is, it is saying that why ideal of objectivity is important, so that we approach anything. If we have that goal in mind, that I have to be objective, that ensures that I am having critical self-awareness, that I may have biases. So actively I am removing my biases, and methodological rigor, and so that I follow a proper method instead of going by my fancies. Understood the entire passage? Now, I had to take a little nuanced passage so that you understand the difference between all the keywords. Otherwise, it's all the time same. So most questions that you get, main idea, crux, everything seems same. Now, let's see the first. What is the central idea conveyed in the passage? So central idea will be something that will be encompassing almost all the things in a very simple way. Correct? So if you see here, objectivity in social sciences is essential, okay, but inherently limited. This is what is the summary of the first two passages. Correct? Objectivity in social sciences is essential, first thing, but inherently limited. This was the second thing. Then requiring awareness and rigor to uphold. Now, to uphold objectivity, what you need? You need awareness and rigor, which was the third part. Correct? This is the central idea. Then, now see the crux. Crux will be much shorter. Okay, in one line, they will say something that completes whatever is the main thing in the passage. This is like how comedians tell a joke. Okay, so basically, there are no fluffy words. Just one line, it covers everything. See, despite its limitation, objectivity must remain as guiding principle in social research. Isn't it much more cleaner? Same, everything it has covered. Correct. This is crux. Then, logical assumption underpins the author's viewpoint in the passage. So, researchers, now see, this is assumption, so it must not be given. Now, if author is saying all this, that there are social biases, correct, there are personal biases that are always there, but ideal of objectivity is important, this, that, then what do you think? Author must have an underlying assumption that if a person is aware of his biases, then he can amend some things. He's not telling that biases are inevitable, you cannot do anything about it. He's telling that if you are aware, you can do something about it. Correct? This is the underlying assumption why he has written this passage. Now read. Researchers are capable of recognizing and managing their own biases to some extent. Understood? This is slightly understanding what the author is trying to convey. Not directly given, but this is the assumption. Then next we come to last, that is corollary. Now, which of the following best represents a corollary drawn from the passage? So corollary will be something that goes more specific. Now, social science findings are never entirely free from personal or ideological influence. Now, if the question was crux of the passage, this is not the most correct option. Why? Because it is only talking about the initial part. It is not complete in the sense. But because this is corollary, so that something comes from the passage itself, even if it is not all encompassing, it is correct. That is, social sciences findings are never entirely free from personal or ideological influence. Yes, passage, if you look at the whole RC, the paragraph 2 is actually talking about this. Correct? That's it. So these are the different keywords that we need to understand. Now, some idea you might have gotten, okay, right? What are these keywords? Now, last is inference. So, what inference can be reasonably drawn? So, it will go slightly beyond, nothing much. See, absolute objectivity in social sciences is idealistic then, but striving for it improves research quality. It added another term, correct? That if you strive, then the research is much better, correct? That was the inference from the passage, not directly given. Research quality word was not used, but the same connotation was being given, that it is very important. So it added a word. This will be inference. Then, now let's do a few questions and then we'll see the approach. Okay, Yeah. So these are the values, as you can see by the font. I have just taken a picture. Now, see, just focus how I am solving this question. Okay, you need not do this. I will do it. Now, first thing, what I say is, instead of reading the passage, first thing, you read the question and options. Okay, assumption based questions are slightly different, that we'll see, that are much more advanced also, that we'll see in later lectures. For all of these, what you have to do, you have to read the question and the option, try to eliminate some of them, and then get back to the RC. Now let's see this. Using your GS knowledge only, you have to eliminate. Our cities need to have well-defined administrative setup with sufficient autonomy. What do you think? This you keep reading about in governance. Yes, this seems correct. Then, ever increasing population densities is a hindrance in our efforts to achieve sustainable development. Okay, so maybe. So this is about population densities. This is the main keyword. Then this is about administrative setup. Correct? Then next, to maintain and develop our cities, we need to adopt sustainability related interventions. So this is about sustainability related interventions. Then last, public private partnership. This is PPP, correct? So this is public private partnership mode. This is PPP mode. Correct? Triple P. This you might have read in economy. Of development is the viable long-term solution for infrastructure and sustainability problems in India. So now, can you see all these options are going in very different directions? Correct? This is talking about administrative setup. This is talking about population density. This is about sustainability related interventions, and this is about public-private partnership model. Correct? PPP model. Now, just by skimming through the passage now, these are four very different directions. I will be able to identify that which of these is correct. Now, let's read the passage. See, our cities are extremely vulnerable to climate change because of large concentration of population and poor infrastructure. Okay. Moreover, population densities are increasing in them. Okay. But we have not yet developed the system to address climate change impacts. Then, our cities contribute to 65% of the GDP, but there are not enough facilities to cater to the needs of the people. It is important to address the issues of air quality, transport, etc. that are vital to identify sustainable solutions. We need to involve citizens in city planning and create an ecosystem that meets the needs of the people. So what it is talking about? It is telling that climate change is impacting how our populations is impacting the population densities and the poor infrastructure. And for that, it is vital to identify sustainable solutions to deal with it. Now, if you read the first thing, is the passage ever talking about the administrative setup? It is not. This is not the answer. Then let's read the D also. Public-private partnership mode, PPP model. Is it saying public-private partnership? Now some people got confused here that we need to involve citizens. That is public participation. This is public-private participation. That is why I said that this RCs, this reading comprehension is not for people who are graduate from English literature. Okay, they won't be able to do this because they don't understand this difference of terminology. Need to involve citizens is public participation. Public-private participation is PPP model. Okay, so this is absolutely not given. Then, to maintain and develop our cities, we need to adopt sustainability related interventions. Seems very correct. Then, ever increasing population densities is a hindrance in our efforts to achieve sustainable development. Now, it is mentioned that population densities is a hindrance, but is it the whole passage? Is it something that the whole passage can be reduced to? No, correct. This is just one of the problems. It also talks about transport, air quality, many other issues. So this is also not all encompassing. Answer becomes C. That is to maintain sustainability related interventions. Understood? What we are doing here, we are first reading the question and options, marking whatever keywords are there, and then from here we read the passage, but we are just skimming through the passage. That's why I didn't even explain you the passage. Not very important. Just simple connection you had to make. Understood? Then yeah, let's do this. Same way we will go. Okay, now, or let's treat the, yeah. Now, again same thing. We are looking for the message, main message of the passage. Now, first thing, we will read the option. If there is something very extreme or exactly opposite to our GS knowledge, that only will eliminate. Now, in India, organic farming should not be promoted as a substitute of conventional farming. What do you think? If you know anything about GS, this is actually true or maybe true. Correct? If you have heard, Sri Lanka is a country that started pushing organic farming too much and then suffered food scarcity. Okay, now, so this may be the answer. Then there are no safe organic alternatives to chemical fertilizers. Is this correct? No. You read about organic alternatives are there for everything. Correct. Chemical fertilizers, we have organic fertilizers also. We have manure also. Correct. This you read about. So this is absolutely wrong. Then in India, farmers need to be guided and helped to make their organic farming sustainable. Yes, this seems true. Correct. Maybe. Then the aim of organic farming should not be to generate huge profits. Okay, as there is still no global market for its products. Is there no global market for organic products? In India itself, there is a huge growing organic products market. If you open Blinkit now you are getting most of the fruits or whatever you buy, they will say that you can get the organic ones also. Correct? This is absolutely wrong, that there is no market. So two options now you have eliminated. Now you mark what is it about. So in India, organic farming, is this about organic farming over organic farming versus conventional farming, or is it about the farmers that needs to be guided about organic farming? So either it is about farmers being guided about organic farming, or it is about organic farming versus conventional farming. Now read the passage. There is a claim that organic farming is inherently safer and healthier. The reality is that because the organic farming industry is still young and not well regulated in India, farmers and consumers alike are not confused what products are best for them. Then, but sometimes use products in ways that can harm them as well. For example, since organic fertilizers are difficult to obtain on large scale, in India, farmers again often use farmyard manure, which may contain toxic chemicals. Correct? If it is not applied in the right dose, it can act on the nervous system of the consumer. Unfortunately, how much and when to use it are not well researched or regulated issues. What do you think? Is it comparing conventional and organic farming? No, it is talking about farmers and them not having adequate knowledge about organic farming. So answer becomes C. Understood? Then, once you get this, now let's see how we are going to solve the questions. So whatever I told you in a way, that only we will now see in terms of steps. That is how to attempt an RC. Now, first step is read the question and options. Okay, now what you have to eliminate extreme words. Okay, no, all this is essential, must, all these are extreme words. Now extreme words are sometimes given like is essential, is necessary, all, most, no, never. Now sometimes it is also given in the contextually extreme form. Okay, contextually extreme form. For example, they will say that organic farming is the way to go or is the way to produce food in India. Now, organic farming is the way to produce food in India in the future. Now, this is not any extreme word is not used, but saying that it is the way forward. Okay, that means it is showing organic farming as the main thing that should be done in India for food production, which is an extreme thing contextually. So that also you have to eliminate. Okay, so now these are extreme words or extreme phrases. This you have to eliminate. Now, if something is completely opposite to your GS knowledge, that also you have to eliminate. In very rare cases, the passage may be about it, but that is hardly less than 1%. And I will tell you how you deal with those passages. Otherwise, if it is completely opposite to your GS knowledge, for example, those questions in which it was saying that organic products have no market, no global market, you can just eliminate, because you know there is a growing market. Then overgeneralization, if there is in the option, for example, overgeneralization is all students who are attending these lectures are also doing the homework. Okay, now this is what? This is overgeneralization. Correct? I have not seen each one of you doing it. Now, because all of you feel sincere, so I am making this claim. But is this claim very correct? No, it is not. Even though I may feel like this, but this is an overgeneralization. Understood? So overgeneralizations also you have to eliminate. So these three things you eliminate. Through this, in most questions, you will be able to eliminate two options. Sometimes some people are able to eliminate three options also. So if you are able to eliminate two, or if you are able to eliminate three options, then it's fine. You can just skim through the passage. If you are able to eliminate even two options, then you have only two things in mind. And then if you just skim through the passage without reading it very carefully, understanding what is the meaning, what are all the things that are mentioned in the passage, remembering them, you don't have to do anything. You have just two keywords in mind, that is it about organic farming versus conventional farming, or is it about farmers and organic farming. This is in my mind. When I start reading the passage, I don't even have to read the passage. I'm just seeing, yeah, farmer, yeah, farmer doing, yeah, it is all talking about farmers. Mark the answer, C. Then, second step will be, of course, to mark the keywords or focus points in the remaining options. So some options I eliminate. Now whatever is remaining in those options, I mark the focus words or keywords. Now I am ready with, let's say, 2-3 keywords in my mind that what I am searching for in the RC. Now I start reading the RC. How will I read the RC? There are two ways of reading the RC. First is skimming. What is skimming? Skimming is very simply, you're just what we were doing just in those two questions, you were just going through it. Correct? Not putting much attention to each word, we just want to get what context the passage is on. So now, where you do skimming, so when you have long to medium length RC. Okay, long to medium, basically, if they are the size that you saw there, that is medium length RC. Sometimes it may be even longer. So in those, of course, you don't have to read it very carefully throughout. So just skimming you have to do. And the other thing, that is why I say you read the question and option first. So because if the options are far, then also you do the same thing. You just skim through it. Understood? Then intensive reading. When you have to do intensive reading, if there is a very small RC. Now, be very careful of these. Every year students get trapped by very small RCs. So very small RCs are generally some kind of philosopher's thought given in 2-3 lines. Sometimes they are lines of a poem. Okay, so all these things are very analytical in nature, not very easy to decipher. So don't get fooled by that, because I am short of time, let me do this question which has only 3-line passage. Very difficult to do in limited time, and the options are also very confusing. Then, so there you will have to do intensive reading, because of course there is hardly 2-3 lines. So that you don't have to skim, you have to read it carefully to somehow get the answer. Then, if the options are very close, correct, now you have done the options and the options are very close, so you know that the difference that I have to find is very close, correct. So then what you have to do, for example, in one of the options it was all about farmers. Now if you see the passage was constantly talking about the consumers also. Now if one option was on consumers on similar lines, then you have to be careful. when you are reading the passage that which is the main part, correct? But usually that won't happen. So if the options are closed, you do intensive reading, and in assumption based questions also you have to do intensive reading, because if you don't really understand what is given in the passage, your assumptions that you have about whatever, or your arguments that are supporting that RC won't be that accurate. And in assumption based question also they gave 2-3 statements, so that's why you have to then read intensively. Understood? This is the next step. Then next is with understanding of RC only now. So once you have read the RC, so GS I am using where? I am using GS only to eliminate these kind of options, so that I narrow my brain when I am reading the passage. This is the only time I use GS. Okay, after I have read the passage, I don't use my GS knowledge. Then what is important? Then only RC is important. So with understanding of the RC only now, you mark the final answer. Understood? These are the 4 steps that we usually follow. First thing, read the option, mark the keywords, eliminate all these extreme kind of statements or options. Then how you have to read the RC, and then you get to with understanding of RC, then you mark the final answer. Understood? This is the basic framework. Of course, there are many rules that we will learn. Some rules we learn today, some tomorrow, and it will go on. Okay. Now, some basic rule, just very basics I have taken. So basic rule, how you have to use GS knowledge. So what I have seen is mostly how you have to use it. So if it is not present in the passage itself, then you eliminate. And I have found that many options are fall in this category. For example, if you remember that question that we did, it was talking about the governance administrative setup, correct? Administrative setup in municipalities and all, correct? Now that is not wrong, but it is not given in the passage, not present in the passage. That you have to immediately eliminate. Understood? And this you will find in many options. Then sometimes, very rarely, you will find something which is opposite to your GS knowledge. Then you have to relook the options, whatever you have cancelled. Like this is hardly less than 1%. Okay, this, like, once they gave a passage in which they were talking about that democracy is a form of government. Now usually we understand democracy in a very good sense, what democracy, best form, ye wo. Okay, we learn all about it, and we are constantly criticizing autocracy or any kind of dictatorship. Now that whole passage argued that democracy is a form of government that ensures that you are not governed by people better than you. So what it is saying, that democracy ensures that you are ruled by people worse than you. Why? Because they will be able to play all the tricks, and they will be able to reach the top and rule over you. Correct? That is also sometimes or many times true in a democracy. You have also felt this. Most countries feel this. Now, this is not a connotation that you usually study in GS. Correct? So those passages are very rare, but by reading them you will be able to identify that it is challenging your beliefs that you have till now or you have read till now. Then you have to relook options. Very rare case. Then next is, this is very important, that is you have to follow majority approach. What is majority approach? That is the option, which is all encompassing, that will be usually true. All encompassing option is usually true. So if there are 2-3 things in a RC, majority approach says what has most of the things covered within 1 line or 2 line, that becomes your answer. Instead of, so what happens, sometimes they pick some of the lines from the passage itself, and that becomes the option. Now of course they are not checking how well can you see, correct? They are not checking this. They are checking that you don't get deceived by this, that one statement picked from the passage given in the options, that becomes correct. No, majority approach which covers everything, that becomes your answer. Then this is also important. So syllabus or buzzwords. okay, which are not in RC, they are, you have to eliminate them. And please be very, very careful. So they have started doing this a lot in past few years. They use your syllabus keywords and the buzzwords that are in use. Now, people have a positive connotation towards the syllabus and buzzwords. Now, usually they won't be, if they won't be given in the RC, you have to eliminate them. For example, they used public-private partnership mode, correct? Now, this is a very important keyword that you study all about. So they use words like this. Please be careful of them. Just because you see them, some people tend to find an affinity towards them. Don't find it. Okay, this is a trap. Then small RCs, again, as I told you, they are very analytical in nature. So please be aware of them. Okay, so that's it for the basic rules. More rules we'll see in the next class. Now we'll practice some questions. Okay. Now, yeah, let's do this. Which of the following is a rational assumption? Okay, now see, let's do it the same way. That is, you see here assumption. Now one more thing. So what they do, they tend to give a lot of adjectives also. Okay, they give a lot of adjectives also. Rational, logical and rational assumption. Then here also you see, reflects the crux is fine. Then see, most logical, rational, practical message. Does not matter. All these adjectives are useless. That's why I have marked only message here, crux, and here assumption. Now, so assumption we are searching for. First, the richer states must lead in the production and adoption of renewable energy. What do you think? This is the same argument as in developed and developing states. Correct? What we say, developed states should take more responsibility. Why? Because they are historical emitters. They have more funds to fund renewable energy technologies. Amazing. Seems correct. Then the poor states always have to depend on rich states for electricity. What do you think? The poor states have to depend on rich states for electricity. Huh? No. In fact, there is a concept called resource poor. Okay. For example, Chhattisgarh. Chhattisgarh is a state that is poor, correct, but it provides electricity to 5 different states. Now, what it says, the poor states always have to depend on rich states for electricity. No, Chhattisgarh is not dependent on any rich state. In fact, many rich states are dependent on it. Why? Because it has a lot of coal and it produces a lot of electricity. Correct? So this itself is wrong, absolutely wrong. Then the state electricity boards can improve their finances by undertaking clean energy projects. Now, this is a little technical. Technical as in, if you have an understanding. So basic thing, you should always remember this, okay, though I'm not taking GS, but you should always remember that renewable energy technologies are usually lesser efficient and more costly. Understand one thing in the world, that if something is more efficient and less costly also, for example, if renewable energy technology which was cheaper than generating electricity through coal, then you didn't need any initiatives of the government or of international organizations. The market itself would have taken care of it. Market itself would have lapped on solar energy, wind energy. That this is the best thing, because market works on money. Correct? So renewable energy technology, why you have so many schemes? Because it must be more costly. It must be less efficient. Less efficient as in how much it can produce with a limited quantity. That I am saying. Okay. From sustainability point of view, these are much more sustainable, and that is why the governments and international organizations push it. But please understand this difference. Same is for organic farming also. Organic farming is not as efficient. Correct? As in how much yield it can give per hectare. Not that efficient. It is also much more costlier. That's why organic produce is costlier, but it is much more sustainable. So understand about all these sustainable technologies, they tend to be less efficient and more costly. Then if you read this statement, what it says, the state electricity boards can improve their finances by undertaking clean energy projects. No, opposite will happen. Why? Because this is much more costly. So their finances won't improve. Then the high economic disparity between the rich and poor state is the major cause of high carbon emissions in India. How are they related? Correct. It depends on how they are. So economic disparity is there between rich and poor state, but carbon emissions depend on what they are burning. Correct. The basic argument that it is trying to make is that poor states don't have much resources, so they are burning anything, they are producing more emission. But that itself is wrong. Most of the rich states produce more carbon emissions. So this does not make any connections. This also is wrong if you can eliminate. Now, I am able to eliminate, let's say, these three directly. If you are not able to, it's fine. You can keep it. Let's say you don't know this, so you keep this option and then read the paragraph. Does not matter. Already you had eliminated 2. So if I were there, I would just mark it. But let's read the statements. Now, so it is all about richer states must lead in production and adoption of renewable energy. Then the richer states have a responsibility to cut down carbon emissions to promote clean energy investments. First line itself is talking about this, but the whole passage should. These are the states that got electricity, grew faster, and now have high per capita income. Then making them capable of sharing India's burden of becoming eco-friendly. Delhi, for example. Now, whatever is written after for example is not that important. Okay, so you can just ignore this. Does not matter. Okay, we'll write this in a point that whatever is written after for example, this, that is not important. Then, because it will not give a new argument, then it is no secret that state electricity boards, which control 95% of the distribution network, are deep neck in losses. These losses further discourage state utilities from adopting renewable energy, and it is more expensive than fossil fuels. So very clearly it says, because it is in losses and because fossil fuels are much cheaper, state electricity boards will not take clean energy projects. So this was completely wrong. This was the whole point of the passage. Answer becomes A. Yes, Dheeraj. Then let's do this. This is a corollary. Now, let's see this. So first thing, this is a very small RC, so we'll have to do intensive reading. You want to do it, if you want to read it before, that also works. Because very small RC, so very small RCs, you have to do intensive reading. If you want, you can read before also. Does not matter. Ultimately, it's the same 3-4 lines. Then, it is actually asking you about a corollary. Now, let's read the passage. It says, in India, the objective of macroeconomic policy is to enhance the economic welfare of the people. Okay, now, you know about macroeconomic policy? I hope you do. Okay, then, is to enhance the economic welfare of the people, and any one wing of such macro policy, monetary or physical. So that means there are two main segments of macroeconomic policy, that is monetary policy and the other is fiscal policy. Now, I do expect that you know monetary policy and fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is managed by what? Fiscal policy is managed by government. Monetary policy is managed by RBI or the central bank. This you must know. Then, so it says, and any one of such macro policy, monetary or fiscal, cannot independently work without active support of another. So one cannot work without the other. Correct? That means Fiscal policy cannot work without monetary policy. Monetary policy cannot work without fiscal policy. Or can you draw parallel? The parallel is that RBI cannot work without government. The government cannot work without RBI. Correct? That is also correct. Now let's read the options. This is about corollary, so it must be something more specific. Now, government should regulate financial market and institutions closely. Is this the crux? Is this the corollary? No, this is not even talking only of government. This is talking about general macroeconomic policy around. Then market economy is not compatible with socialistic policies of the government. It is not talking about socialistic policy, market, nothing. Then financial sector reforms are required for enhancing the economic welfare of the people. What do you think? Generic statement, but this is also not given in the passage that we need financial sector reforms, this, that, nothing. Now read the first. The central government cannot work independently of the government. Is this encompassing the entire passage? No. It is giving you only one flow, that is RBI is dependent on government. Correct? But because this is corollary, this becomes, that is, the central bank cannot work independently of the government. So answer is A. Understood? Yes, Dheeraj. Okay, so these are the basic questions that we have to do. Okay, in the next class, so I will be sharing a PDF with you. Okay, in the evening, in the late evening, I will be sharing a PDF with you. That PDF printout you keep from next class. So that on next class, because you will be solving, so if you do it physically on a piece of printed paper, it is much better. So I will share the PDFs in the late evening. Okay, tomorrow also you will have time because class will be on 1. So that printout you please keep with yourself. This is what I had to do. Some rules here and there I will keep on teaching, some elimination tricks here and there. Otherwise, most things that I had to cover, that I have done today. So that's why it was much chill class for you and much more exhausting class for me. Tomorrow will be opposite. That's it. Thank you.